Hi everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Gastonia, the internet's #1 choice for unreliable emergency history content. I'm your host, Alex Cummings. This is the final episode of Radio Free Gastonia for the spring 2021 season, and it comes at a very just really weird time. I made another video like this almost exactly a year ago, May 7th, 2020. And the name of that video was Tying a Bow on the Weirdest Semester Ever. And it seemed like that was going to be the weirdest semester we ever had. It was only a month and a half, 2 months into this thing. At the time, it seemed like we'd been going through it for a while. We'd been doing COVID for a while then. And it seemed like maybe the horizon for it to be over would be nearer and sooner. Here I'm recording a video while we're still a year later. Well, the end is not really in sight. Things are more auspicious now since a lot of people are getting the vaccine. Obviously, the situation elsewhere in the world outside of North America is just very bad. And even inside the United States, it's not clear that enough people will get the vaccine to actually put this to bed. So, it's not clear that we're going to be able to achieve the escape velocity to actually, put our distance between us and COVID. At the time when I was speaking to students last May, I was thinking a lot about the long-term implications of COVID. I was thinking at the time that this crisis will pass at some point, and then we'll have to deal with long-term implications the same way that the Vietnam War was over at some point, but then you spent the next couple of decades dealing with the trauma and human, just wreckage that came out of that. It doesn't just go away, or any other war or conflict, famine, any kind of crisis like that. Now I'm not really so sure that you can separate the event itself and the long-term consequences because it has stretched out so far. In any case, I'm really reminded of a quote from Karl Marx, actually. Marx famously said that Marx described humans as the most gregarious animal. The human being is, in the most literal sense, a political animal, not merely a gregarious animal, but an animal which can individuate itself only in the midst of society. I think that's so interesting because we've spent so much of the last year not able to see each other, not able to congregate. That word, congregate, to be together, to a congregation. We have at times when people were protesting and demonstrating about the issue of police violence especially over the summer of 2020, and when we all went to vote, we did come together at times. And there have been conflicts over this, like when are churches allowed to hold services, to literally congregate. But to a large extent, our ability to be gregarious, to be human and sociable and, as Marx puts it, political with each other has been really truncated. And I think that that's just something we're never going to forget. This is so different from, well, basically almost anything any of us have experienced in the past. And also, it's kind of a rare, extremely rare incident, almost unprecedented, in the way that almost everybody on Earth is experiencing kind of the same thing at the same time. Maybe if you live in an extremely remote village somewhere in South America, maybe COVID hasn't gotten to you yet. But even then, I actually don't think that's totally true. But it's very strange. It's very unusual for, like, 9/11 was bad, but, like, it's not like it affected people in Thailand or, you know, Kazakhstan the same way as us in the United States. So something happening to everyone at the same time is really unusual. And so this is what we've been going through. But the gregarious animal, that's what I was getting at. Um, Education is a field that, in my opinion, is all about human touch and human contact. Just actually being present and being with other people and constructing knowledge by accessing the being of other people. It's not just a sort of erector set that you get in the mail and it says some assembly required and just a bunch of instructions and tools. I think that it's something more than that, and it's been very hard for us to do that. This uncanny, unprecedented, bizarre circumstance that we've been thrust into really put the whole project of education under the microscope in a very uncomfortable way, and really was a stress test for, like, what is education for? What is the teaching? Is it just to get a degree? Is it just to get a credential? Is this just a gatekeeping role that teachers, administrators, high schools, colleges play? Is this all just been kind of a sham? And I think that has been really put to the test in this whole experience. And understandably, people are like, why am I spending $30,000 a year on something that is just like a correspondence course, or just somebody sending an email with YouTube links in it? And that's what teaching is. That's what education is. Okay, yes, I do have to push all these buttons to get to be able to pass go, and get my little letters next to my name, and then, like, gain access to different parts of the workforce. If that's all education is, then we've got some problems. And I hope that out of this we've been able to kind of understand better what we're doing. I know that students and teachers, administrators, parents, the wider community have tried really hard to make this work. And there was always the question of whether maybe it might not. And there were many times where it really did seem like this whole sort of jury-rigged kind of contraption stuck together with bubble gum and, like, scotch tape might not work. But I think we have shown. I hope. I know it hasn't all been good, but the students have tried really hard. The amazing people who are in our classes at Georgia State University have rose to the occasion. And their lives are just, like, not easy under normal, quote unquote, normal circumstances. But all the other pressures of family and work and social responsibilities and money, and that students were negotiating before all this happened. Now, like, this gigantic elephant of the COVID is sitting on top of it. People have tried really hard, and I hope that teachers have also met them where they are. I'm continually inspired by what people have done here. Under really just extreme circumstances. It's been a very long year. We've seen the murder of George Floyd and many other people by the police and other people, but primarily the police. We've seen an unprecedented, and I think, movement of people to challenge and question that. In a country that worships law and order and CSI and NCIS and KQPSBD, Boston, whatever. We went through a very challenging election that was held under really circumstances that maybe never existed in the United States um, for a big political season. We got through all that. We're still here. And that's what I was talking to students about on the final day of class. The sense that maybe we're more durable, maybe we're stronger, maybe we're more resilient than we thought, or I thought anyway. Maybe our institutions, maybe our communities are more able to hang together even under really bad circumstances than we might have imagined. And I think that's a source of a lot of hope. Um, it's not so much how much we get beaten, but it's how many times we keep getting up and how many times that we refuse to quit. And that's what we've done. I think that's really inspiring. Um, it really makes me think of, in my class, I often like to talk about the speech that Robert Kennedy gave on the night that Martin Luther King was murdered. This was a time in America that was probably the closest parallel to now in terms of the tumultuousness of the time. A great deal of political and social upheaval, just extreme sort of political fractiousness, and people being murdered, like MLK, like RFK just a few months later. And when RFK came out and he gave this speech to a crowd in Indianapolis, a lot of African Americans were in the crowd. This was supposed to be a political rally, but the news had arrived that MLK had been killed. And this was not like in the Twitter or, Snapchat, WhatsApp age. People didn't get this news immediately. Like, they had to actually read a newspaper or turn on TV or have someone tell it. It didn't just like pop up in their pocket. Like, oh, Martin Luther King's been killed. Oh, and 13 really cool ceviche recipes. Awesome. RFK was speaking to this crowd, and he learned that Martin Luther King Jr. had been killed, and he had to tell them. And it's a very tense moment. I mean, America was basically like a bomb with the fuse lit at the moment. And what RFK said, he tried to frame it in terms of his own loss. I mean, the fact that his brother had been murdered. RFK didn't totally get it because he was kind of like, oh, well, my brother, someone I care about a lot, was also killed by a white man. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, it's not really the same thing, but he was trying to relate in a human way. And, he quoted this poem by the Greek poet Aeschylus. And, I really think that it makes a lot of sense in the context that we're in. What RFK quoted to that crowd in Indianapolis in this extremely raw and combustible moment, in this moment of pain and anger, was that he who learns must suffer, and even in our sleep, pain that cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart. In our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom to us by the awful grace of God. In our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom to us by the awful grace of God. This pain that falls drop by drop. We come to know the awful grace of God. Now, that's an interesting way to put things, all right? I think that this idea of the awful grace of God is hard to understand. Because it sounds very negative and dark. It's awful. It's bad. But I think the word awful also derives from the sense of awe, like the sense of seeing, the Grand Canyon or a mesa in New Mexico, or like anything that's big and sublime and majestic. A sense of awe. before the face of God, or the, sort of irreducible, arresting beauty of the world. So Aeschylus and RFK in this case were talking about how we come to know the awful grace of God through the pain and the suffering that we grit our teeth, we bite down on a wooden spoon, we make our way through it, and we have. I really have just a tremendous amount of admiration and love for certainly, absolutely, our first responders, quote unquote essential workers, which is an interesting term, but the nurses, the grocery store workers, the people unloading and packing and dealing with just the dissemination of goods that are essential for all of us. An immense, immense admiration and respect. But I also feel that toward the students that we've had in our classes, the people that I've gotten to know who have a great deal of dignity and have had to deal with an extremely difficult situation, make difficult choices, bear down and get through some tough times. And also our faculty and staff who've also had their own burdens to bear. It's really a testament to the human spirit, and particularly the spirit of us and our diverse communities here, who got through it and helped each other and made it so that this nightmare was a little bit less nightmarish, which is, I think, probably one of the greatest reasons for us to be here at all. So anyway, I'm tuning out, but I really do appreciate it, and I care about each and every one of you in our class. Even if you were annoying, I care about you. But there are going to be more challenges in the future, I guess. But hopefully we can find a way to recognize our own strength and resilience. I think that's really important. So anyway, I'll see you next time, the next season. Good night.